let me talk to you about the Supreme Court, okay? Because you say, Howie, why are we going to the Supreme Court? Well, because I think when we talk about the Constitution and we talk about American founding, right? Obviously, there's a lot of talk right now about the president. There's a lot of talk about Congress. And the court does get, right now it's not in the news. And of course, one of the great roles of the president is to appoint Supreme Court justices when an opening comes up, and then Congress, the Senate has to confirm. So the main role of the Supreme Court is to determine whether things are constitutional or not. Okay, mainly, right? There's other things they do, but either, let's just say a law is passed, whether it's constitutional, or somebody's enacting a statute at some level, it could be local, state, county, federal. They look at it if it goes through the process, or they take it directly. Is it constitutional? What makes it unconstitutional? Well, it violates the Constitution. They're doing something that the Constitution says you can't do, or the Constitution doesn't say they can do. Okay. So we have Constitution, we have Supreme Court, we have the Constitution, and we have what's unconstitutional. And so what I want to do is I'm going to go through a little journey here. Where are my glasses here? Okay. So what I was doing this morning, because this article fueled me to go forward here. So we have the Supreme Court. They look at things that whether it's constitutional or not. And there's certain ways to look at the whether something. How do they determine whether something's constitutional? And there's a couple of different ways they can look at the text. It's the textual interpretation. They look at the text. What does the Constitution say? Does that say is that and the law or whatever they're looking at? Does it in contrast? Is it contradictory to the text of the United States Constitution? Second would be the original intent. So if it's not specifically in the text, what's the intent of the founding fathers? What did they may not have said, because they couldn't predict the future of what we're dealing with in terms of like AI or internet, but right, modern use of fossil fuels. So what was their intent? And then you apply that intent to the modern situation. Okay, and then of course there's precedent. Precedent being that there's been a Supreme Court and other courts around for a long time. And if certain decisions have been made, that the court tries to uphold those decisions. But that's not an absolute, of course, because a court can be wrong. The Supreme Court in an earlier time could be wrong. And, so precedent isn't the equivalent of textual interpretation, because text is clear. It doesn't change. It violates it, out. It's not constitutional. Or intent of the fathers, clearly that the intent of the fathers is this, and you bring that law, it's in violation, it's out. And then precedent. Now, if it's not a clear reason to overturn it, the behind the precedent approach is that, well, you leave it. But if it's clearly that the court earlier was wrong, like they did with Roe v. Wade, they're saying that we're not saying abortion is right or wrong. We're saying that there was precedent. There is precedent. The Roe v. Wade. They said that the federal government can't. It's a right to have an abortion, and they're saying no, the court was wrong. So the precedent gets thrown out the window, and they return it to the states. They don't make a decision on abortion. They say the issue goes back to the states. So, but the textual is the most important. And if you look at the textual, you have the Constitution itself, and of course, the Declaration of Independence is really important in the sense that if you look at Thomas Jefferson's writing, okay, and I read it before, I'm going to read it again, that what is the essence of the Constitution? What is the essence of our founding? And I think it has to be, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So I know we've heard this a million times, and I'm not claiming to be a constitutional scholar. I'm not claiming to say adding. Listen, I'm not adding I'm not adding discovered layers here. What I'm doing is reminding us that in order to move forward in a truthful manner and to battle in the intellectual arena against this kind of editorial that we just looked at, and to make sure that we're consistent with ourselves, that we ground ourselves in these principles, and we look and we say, okay, if we're mini Supreme Court justices, if you will, right? Each one of us acts as a Supreme Court justice and says, I need to look at this, whatever's going on in my life or whatever's being proposed by this politician. Where does it fit in? If I was a Supreme Court justice, would it be constitutional? And then you look at the text. But really, the intent of the founding fathers is really the key, because if it's in the text, it's really pretty obvious. Okay, Bill of Rights, it's clear, and if it's a violation, we hold these truths to be self-evident. All right, what's self-evident? That it's obvious, that there's no argument required. You don't have to make an argument. If something's self-evident, then you start with that. You don't have most things you have to prove. No, you're starting with this axiom. This is it. That's self-evident. There's no argument. We start from this point. There's no argument to get to that point. So these truths, okay? So he's saying these truths are self-evident. All right. And the self-evident is this, that all men, of course he means humans, men and women, are created equal. Created. That we shouldn't lose the word created. We're created. They're created. We're created by who? Well, he's going to answer that for us, right? That all men are created equal. Now, what does that mean? That's equity, not equality. Okay, if you interpret created equal means that the results have to be the same, then that's equity. And that's not clearly what not Thomas Jefferson is saying. Okay, not all men are not created with equal results. All men are created equal. So what is the equality? I've said it over and over again, and you can never get tired of saying it. It is the dignity that God puts in you. You are a self-contained creation from God, and your right to exist is equal to every other person that ever has, is, or will exist. You are loved equally by equal to everybody who has, is, or will ever exist. And that dignity, that honor, that nobility, that sonship or daughtership as a child of God is no better or no worse than anybody else, no matter your circumstances, and no matter the results of your life, no matter how fast you run the 40-yard dash, no matter how much hair or how handsome you are or how rich you are. It's exactly the opposite of equal results, independent of results. Even if the results are the worst, even if you have made all kinds of mistakes your entire life and messed everything up, your dignity as a human being is still not any less or any more. And that's the power of redemption. And you can return to it at any time. So Thomas Jefferson, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator. They are endowed. They're filled with this. What are they filled with? First, by their creator. Creator, by the way, is a capital C in the document. Creator is God. When you capitalize something, you're saying it's something more than just a noun. It's a proper noun. It's God. Who's the creator? God. They're endowed by their creator. They are given by their creator. They're endowed as such. It's inserted into them. It's part of their DNA. They're endowed. They're saturated. They're marinated by their creator with what? With certain unalienable rights, right? And unalienable means it can't be taken away. Nobody ever can take it away. You can be put in jail, but you can never have your freedom taken away. Your true freedom is really at the core of your being. And no matter what your physical constraints are, you're still free if you choose to exercise that freedom, as difficult as it may be. So there are unalienable rights. And what are those unalienable rights? And by the way, rights is a capital R. So creator is a capital C. God, rights, not just these little things, these legal, no, the rights. It's a proper noun. They're your rights. It's a personal part of you that gets a capital letter. Just like your name gets a capital letter, your rights get a capital R, your dignity. With certain unalienable rights that among them are life, capital L, liberty, capital L, and the pursuit of happiness, capital H. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness,